Welcome to r/EntitledParents, where this disgusting old lady calls an innocent worker the R word just because they have a form of dyslexia. Entitled lady calls me the R word, instantly banned from the only 2 stores in our town. Growing up, I struggled a lot with math. I just couldn't make it work, and as a result, I was often called stupid, useless, and the infamous R word by my tutors, and often locked in a room by myself during math class, so they didn't even have to deal with me from 1st to 10th grade. This obviously had a negative effect on me. Hearing that word now instantly throws me back to those horrible years and how I was treated. I was diagnosed with dyscalculia, or math dyslexia, when I was 24 years old. I am 27 now. This incident happened in December. For some context, the lady that called me the R word had been a regular customer for a long time. Long before I even started working at the store 3 years ago. But it was only about 2 years ago that she started to treat me the way that she did. She was always a bit grumpy and rude, but nothing unusual. About 2 years ago, I was falsely accused of stealing money from our elderly neighbor by her relatives, which turned out to be a lie. The elderly lady, let's call her Mary, who has passed away, was an old family friend of ours, in a way, like a third grandmother to me, as she was a close friend of my maternal grandmother, and she celebrated birthdays and Christmases with us. She had simply lent a small sum of money to me so I could pay off some debts, and by the time these accusations began to make their way around town, I'd already paid the amount back. I've got a whole list of other stories about her deadbeat entitled relatives, but that is for another time. But the entitled lady of this story is one of those who judges you despite having all the facts. She decided to go from disliking me to absolutely hating me in a matter of a day. One day, after these rumors began to spread, she began to become extremely agitated. For instance, if I asked her if she wanted a receipt, she would roll her eyes and snap, "Of course, I'm a regular here, and you know I always want my receipts when it comes to the likes of you." I knew that, however, it is store policy to ask if they want a receipt, as it is in all stores. She also cussed me out for being too kind to a child who had gone into the pick and mix and taken some candy, and proceeded to cuss out the mother, telling her, "We're in the middle of a pandemic, but I guess you wouldn't know that wherever you're from." The woman was a woman of color. Not that it matters, but it seemed clear to me that she said it with racist intent, and she reported me to the boss for not taking it seriously enough. I did take it seriously. I talked to the mother, who then told her son why that was not an okay thing to do, and I shut down the pick and mix to clean it out and sanitize it. The entitled lady would also not acknowledge me at all, even if I said hello to her at the store, keeping her head down and avoiding the area that I was in. Not that it bothered me that much. In fact, I found it a bit amusing that my mere existence would trigger someone so bad for no legitimate reason whatsoever. Until this December. December is a busy month for our little grocery store. The only one out of 2 in our town, and of course, it was a hectic day with a lot of customers. I had already been at work for a few hours when this entitled lady came through to the checkout. I processed her groceries, and at the end of the transaction, I asked her if she wants the receipts. This is how it went down. "Would you like the receipt, Mom?" She looks me dead in the eye. "I have a question for you." "Yes, Mom?" "Are you just dense, or are you completely I was actually so stunned, I just stared at her for a moment. Before I could react though, another sweet old lady snapped at her. "What kind of language is that? How dare you? I'm a regular at the store. She should remember who I am and my needs. It doesn't matter if you're a regular. It's her job to ask. It's not her job to be spoken to like that. I don't trust her. She stole money from Mary." I knew Mary, and I know OP. Mary was like a third grandmother to her. She wouldn't dream of doing something like that. Shame on you. By now, I was on the verge of tears, and I excused myself as I called for my coworker, leaving the checkout to go hide in the break room, where I instantly broke down in tears. 15 or so minutes later, my manager comes into the break room. I tell her my side of the story and how the woman behaved in general towards me. She then tells me to take the day off to calm down and talk to my therapist, and said that she would find someone to cover my shift. She knows my history, and she was actually the one who suggested that I get tested for dyscalculia when I started working for her, and to not worry about the entitled lady. It was my last shift of the year, so I didn't hear what had happened until I came into work just a few days ago. I was told that the woman had been banned from the store. The sweet old lady, plus a bunch of other witnesses in the line, had testified to my manager about her outburst and were outraged. This allowed her to go to higher ranks to have the woman banned indefinitely. The other grocery store up the street from us caught wind of the incident and decided to ban her as well. Apparently, I wasn't the only store clerk who she terrorized in the area. The entitled lady now has to drive for over an hour to get to a grocery store. Well, at least this story had a very positive ending. It's a shame that you had to be terrorized for this to happen in the first place, OP. But now, think of the inconvenience for this woman for the rest of her life if she decides to stay in the area. 1 hour, drive, return trip, just to get groceries. That is terrible. Very much deserved, but terrible nonetheless. I also love that other people in the store stood up for you. It would have been so much easier for the sweet old lady not to say anything, but you know, she was super brave, stood up for you and for people in general, I guess, in a way, or people with dyslexia, dyscalculia, stuff like that, and put a foot down and say, you know what, you can't say that. That is wrong. You're a disgrace. Get out of here. Now moving on to our second post. Now this one comes from r/entitled people. HR expects me to work for free. I completed my graduation from a pretty prestigious university in my country and moved back home as my parents weren't doing so well. Although I had an attractive degree, I had no previous job experience or connections, as everyone I knew moved on from the dead-end city I was living in. I applied for internships and tried walk-ins to no avail. Finally, a friend shared a job posting for a sales job at a prestigious publishing firm. Not a job I was going for at all, but at that point in time, I was desperate. I go in for the interview and had a great time meeting the team. There were a total of 3 rounds with people being cut at each. Now the stipend they were offering was already extremely low, $215 a month, but I figured I could move on to better places or even go higher up in the company with time. Within a couple of days, they called me with a job offer. I was absolutely ecstatic as I could finally start contributing to the house, albeit quite measly. We discussed timings, shifts, and then, just as she was about to hang up, I asked, "The salary is the same as what was posted on the job site, right?" She said, though, that she had no idea what I was talking about. She was the HR, and that I should be grateful for getting a step in so early in my career. She went on about the training they provide, which would cost me thousands anywhere else. Again, it was a sales job, the connections I would make, and the exposure. Finally, she said that I was expected to work for free. At this point, I was speechless and asked for how long. She said at least 6 months until I could prove my mettle. I politely said no, and the floodgates came loose, with her calling my generation entitled, how we didn't value work, expected to be given everything on a plate, etc. At this point, I simply hung up. She called me a couple of times more, but I ignored them, until she called me a third time, offering me $100 a month. I said no, more yelling, I blocked her. A couple of months later, my uncle, who lived in the national capital and had a business, decided to open a chain in the city and recruited me to help around the business and learn. And yes, he did pay me, much more than I deserved, to be honest. I also updated my LinkedIn profile. A few days passed by, and my uncle called me to the office, turned his desktop around so I could see a message. It was the HR woman from before, messaging my uncle about how rude, unprofessional, and destructive I was, and how I left them hanging, costing the company valuable resources. I was speechless, and after I told him the whole story, we had a good laugh. Needless to say, I blocked her from my LinkedIn after that. Alright, so let me get this straight. 3 rounds of interviews for a sales job in which you're expected to earn $0 for 6 months. That is ludicrous. What's even crazier is that they said initially on the website that you would be getting money. Now look, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a lot. It was what, $250 or something per month. The maximum they went to was $100 a month. What's that? $25 a week, about $4 a day. Is that enough to live on? Are you joking? Now look, I don't want to do even more maths here, but I will. Because say you were working 9 to 5, 8 hours a day, that would be 50 cents per hour. That is less than you would get from walking around the streets of the city and looking for coins on the floor. Are you sorry, that's ridiculous. Hey, I gotta say, by the way, thank God it was your uncle's company who you were working for and not some other company who may well have believed what this woman was saying. I'm sure if she's coming from a reputable company like the one she works for and is the head of the HR department, that would worry me as an employer. But wow, the fact that she is just going on a tirade trying to cancel your entire career, terrible. Lucky though that your uncle knew you well enough to know that was all a load of rubbish. Good for you for not taking the job. Now moving on to our third post. Neighbor lets herself in while I am home alone. I was, to my knowledge, alone and taking a shower, as my parents had gone out to run an errand. I had the window in the shower slightly ajar so that I could hear when my parents pulled into the driveway and opened the front door. About 5 minutes later, I heard the front door open and shut. My first thought was, oh, my parents are home. And I continued my shower. Foolish as I am, I didn't think twice about the fact that I didn't hear the car pull in. I finished not long after, and I walked out the bathroom fully clothed, thankfully, and began skipping to the living room. Then, on the couch, seated, was a middle-aged woman who I definitely didn't know, drinking some of my older sister's juice, meaning she'd been in our fridge unconsented. I was a bit too stunned to speak. Not scared per se, as this woman looked harmless and appeared to be unarmed. I tried to reach for my phone on the dining table to call the police, but she stood up and blocked me. I could apprehend her if necessary, but this woman easily looked like one of my mother's clients, and my mum has a tendency of letting people over without informing me beforehand, so I thought that this could be another instance, and therefore I wasn't overly concerned. The following conversation ensued. The woman said, "You look just like your mother." I look nothing like my mother. "Oh, but you have your brother's eyes." "I don't have a brother." "Ah, then you're your father's daughter." "You would know better than me. I haven't seen him in 5 years." Now this was false, but I wanted to see if she knew this. "Well, who are you?" "Yeah, that's my question. Why are you in my house?" "Your house? You're a child. Don't speak to me like that. Where are your parents?" No joke. This woman really had the audacity to say this. "That is none of your concern. Now kindly leave before I call the authorities." What kind of people raise such a snobby b****? "Excuse me, mind your manners in my home. Move aside, please." I step around her and brush her with my shoulder as I grab my phone. The woman begins banshee screaming that I've assaulted her by shoving her aside. I get my phone out to call my parents when I then hear the garage door open. I thank whatever Lord there is and rush to the door. I run to my dad and started babbling about the strange woman who trespassed into our home while I was showering, and less than 20 minutes later, cops are pulling up to our home and the woman is escorted to the station. My dad actually told her to stay put if she didn't want him to press any charges. We then find out that she is our new neighbor, and this was her attempt at getting to know us. I am mortified and express my opinion to my dad that he should press charges. After a quick look at our home security cameras, our case was proclaimed valid and my dad is pressing charges. I don't know the mechanics or specifics of it all, but I'm happy he took my opinion into consideration. Now guys, I reckon the majority of you right now are thinking the same thing as me. OP, why didn't you just lock the door? But look at this comment, I'll put it up on screen right now. OP has edited and left this. I see the same comment that the door was not locked. It was. I swear, I made sure everything was locked before I got in the shower. We have a very quiet lock on our front door, but a very creaky door itself. That is why I heard the door open. I honest to God have no clue how she undid the lock. I'm sorry if I implied that I had left the door open, but no, that wasn't the case. My dad would never allow me. So with that all being said, answer me this, guys. Comment down below if you will. How on earth did this woman get in the house? Through the door, we know that for sure, but how does she unlock it? Unless OP actually left it unlocked. But what are the chance of that? I know that I wouldn't do that. My parents are big on locking the door as well, as parents probably should be. And I know that there's a very small chance that on the one occasion I would leave the door unlocked, just forgetting it, somebody would walk in. It's too much of a coincidence. This woman must have done something. What do you reckon she did? How do you reckon she got in the door? Please do comment down below. With that all being said though, she's definitely very crazy. I think we can all agree on that. That's weird. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of r/EntitledParents. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you want more from me right away, please do check out this video on screen. Touch it with your mouse or your finger. One of those two. If you go with your tongue, it might not work. Subscribe up here if you're new, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow for a brand new video.